Google Flights, one of the most popular tools used for finding plane tickets and one of the absolute best ways for finding cheaper tickets. I've used this tool to save thousands and thousands of dollars, and without it, there's no way I could afford to travel as much as I do. But there are a lot of nuances that make all the difference when trying to use this tool to save money. So buckle up and get ready to save huge with Google Flights. In this video, I'm going to cover all of the tricks I use on Google Flights to help me save big. I'll start with an example where your end destination is known, but make sure to pay special attention later on where your end destination is not known, because this is really where you find the best deals. Before sharing all of the best tips, I want to first share the general strategy of finding flights. Just like you, I love taking flights that cost less than $20, but these are very difficult to find. Maybe just 2% of flights are this cheap. The airlines are in control of what percentage of flights can be that cheap. So you and I can't really do anything to increase that 2%, but we can increase our search volume. Rather than having just maybe 15 flights to choose from, if we could increase the amount of flights available to 150, we would have much greater odds of finding a flight that's really a steal. That's essentially what we're doing here, and then effectively sorting through all of those flights to really find the 2% that are a bargain. All right, let's open Google Flights in incognito mode or on DuckDuckGo just so you're tracked less, and then choose our base city. I'm gonna choose Dallas, Texas because I have family there. Tip number 1 is to enter the city name, not the airport code, because then you'd be limiting yourself on options. By typing the city name, I now have DFW and Love Field to fly from. Tip number 2 is to enter any other relevant nearby airports that you could also fly from. I have a lot of friends in Austin, Texas, and frequently go there, so I'm gonna add that to the list too. I normally travel between the two on Megabus and book my tickets so far in advance that they only cost $1 each way. So for me, it doesn't really increase the price of travel to fly from Dallas or Austin. Also, I say relevant cities because if it's difficult for you to get somewhere nearby, like Houston for example for me, because I'd have to Uber from the bus station or just drive there, which is expensive, then maybe it's not worth factoring those into your Google search because they're going to make the overall price of the flight more expensive. Now I have 3 potential airports to fly out of. In the future, I'm going to be moving to DC for work, so I'm going to enter that as the final destination. Of course, typing the city name instead of the airports, so I have all 3 DC airports to fly into. However, DC also has good train connections, so I'm going to include Philadelphia as well, because I can easily get between the 2 cities without a car. Now I have 3 airports to fly out of and 4 airports to land in, which is so many more options than just having 1 airport to fly out of and 1 airport to land in. Yes, it's definitely more convenient to fly out of the airport that's closest to you and into the airport that's closest to your destination, but traveling is pretty expensive and this is just what you gotta do to keep bringing down the price. Tip 3 is to search for plane tickets with just 1 person at a time, because sometimes airlines will have price buckets with only 1 seat available at the lowest ticket price. I almost always fly the cheapest economy available, which often means I can't choose my seats, and thus, even if I'm traveling with a group, can't sit with my friends or family anyway. And it really doesn't feel all that different to sit in a different part of the plane versus on a completely different flight. You're still separated anyway. Alright, let's choose some dates and then begin the hunt. Also, if you watch through all of the tips, I'll share some bonus information at the end that I think is essential for booking flights. Know that the price estimations on this screen show the estimated price for a 4-day trip. Tip number 4 is to change this amount for the number of days you're looking for, just to have a better price estimation for your amount of days. But as you'll see later on in the video, hint hint, your actual number of days away may be a little bit different than the estimation you have right now. There's a lot of information on the screen. Of course, the airline name and the flight duration, but I really want you to look at 3 very important things here on the screen. Extra little bonus for you, but now Southwest Airlines is finally available on Google Flights, woohoo! The first important thing is the airports, which is the smaller text beneath the flight duration. As I mentioned earlier on, we can fly from 3 airports into 4 airports for this example, and because some airports are in different states, it's good to have a general idea of where these plane tickets are going. Especially if the prices are similar, paying a little bit extra to fly into the closer airport may be worth it, especially if the price of driving, trains, metro, or another form of transportation makes that overall trip more expensive than the flight to the closer airport. An easy way to see how much it would cost to fly into the closer airport is to just remove the farther away city with the better price. In this example, I'll remove Philadelphia. Now I have to see if the plane train combo of flying into Philadelphia and then getting to DC is more expensive than just flying to DC. But for this example, let's just add back Philadelphia to the mix. The next important item on the screen is tip number 6, the flight time. If you're flying from your home and leaving on a late night flight, you're essentially paying one extra night for staying in a hotel or a hostel than you would have if you were just taking an early morning flight the next day instead and sleeping at your home. Even if the flight price is a little bit more expensive the next day, it may be cheaper overall doing that rather than taking the late night flight and paying for an extra night of housing. The next tip is the reverse, for flying back home. You'd ideally want to fly back home as late as possible to essentially give yourself an extra night in your destination without having to pay for that night of lodging. The more time you spend sleeping at home, the cheaper your overall trip will be, even if you spend a little bit more on airfare. Lodging can be anywhere from free to over $100 per night, so you'll just have to run those numbers based on your situation and what you're expecting and pay for lodging. The last important thing I want you to notice on this screen is tip number 8, the carry-on bags. Sometimes the cheapest flights are only that cheap because they don't come with a carry-on. If you don't need a carry-on, great, you're saving money. If you do think you need a carry-on to travel, I'd first recommend checking out this video about how to pack everything you need to put in your carry-on into your personal item. If you still do need a carry-on, meaning you're essentially bringing 2 carry-ons, then I would adjust the Google Flights filter and set the amount of bags to 1 so that Google Flights auto-populates all of the flights to include that extra price of paying for the carry-on bag. The next tip is to use the date calendar to see how you can adjust your departure and arrival dates to save more money. If you're super flexible, try changing the original dates to dates that were outside of the date calendar to see if you can find even cheaper flights. Tip number 10 is to only look for one-way tickets on Google Flights, because sometimes you'll be limited to only look at the same airline that you took on the outbound flight to come back. By searching for each ticket separately, you'll have more options overall and will probably have cheaper tickets. I've found in my booking experience that it's often cheaper to buy domestic tickets one way, whether you're flying in the US or in the EU, than it is when you do these flights round trip. However, tip number 11 is to still use the round trip mode to look also, because I've also seen that flying from the US to abroad is cheaper when you have a return ticket versus just booking 2 one-way tickets. Try both options out to see, and let me know in the comments if you agree that one-way tickets domestically and round-trip tickets abroad are cheaper for you too. Going back to the one-way tickets, if your dates are more or less known, open up the calendar and see if you notice any general patterns. If you see bundles of cheaper prices ahead of you, wait a little bit and those flight prices will be pushed back as time advances, and you can get those cheaper deals later on if you wait to book. Also, if you happen to see this symbol, then Google thinks that the flight probably can't get any cheaper. Google has so much data available, so you can practically guarantee that this is the cheapest rate for that flight. I've booked a few flights with the guarantees, and for me, they've never dropped in price. Alright, we're just about done with this section where your destination is known. In the next section, I'll cover what to do when your destination isn't known, and this is how you really save big. But one last tip here first. Now that you have your plane ticket, you can compare it for the typical price for the route using the price bar at the bottom of the screen. If you're in the green range, great, looks like you're saving money. If you're in the red range, boo! You should be cautious when booking this flight because it's much more expensive than normal. I've only been in the red section one time. It seems to me like it's much more common to be in the yellow and green sections, but what do y'all think? Alright, now let's talk about the explore mode. On the Where To bar, click Anywhere and then click Explore. Google Flights will display options to anywhere in the world at any time. The first thing I like to do here is to add a limit to the price via filters. Now, zoom in on the map. Note that every single blue dot on the map is an option, but Google doesn't display all of these to save space on the map. So some options may still be cheap, but might be hidden by Google. Next, you can adjust the search range a little bit more based on what best suits you. This can be the month you travel, how long you travel for, or even the specific dates you want to travel for if you have those. You can also limit the results of the Anywhere search to a specific region or country, say Europe or Poland. Note that especially for Europe, if you can just fly there, getting around anywhere else afterwards is much cheaper because of budget airlines and trains or buses. This can create some pretty interesting itineraries. One time I flew round trip from Dallas, Texas to Bucharest, Romania, and after landing in Romania, took another flight to Madrid, Spain, which was my original first destination. This combo was much cheaper than flying from Dallas to Madrid round trip, and I got to see Bucharest, Romania on the way back. Also, since the Explore mode looks through so many different combos of dates through an extended period of time, you can get a rough idea for what the cheapest price on a specific route actually is going to be, and then compare it to how much you're paying for that route. For example, if the Explore mode tells you that the price for a specific route is $35, and for your specific dates, if you're paying $38, that's not that much more than the cheapest minimum price available, so it's a pretty good ticket. But if you're paying something like $57, then maybe you want to change your dates a little bit to try to get somewhere closer to that minimum price. Alright, that was a lot of information, and I've got one last tip for you before we jump into some of the bonus information that I think is essential for booking flights. Tip number 19. If you don't like what you see, just wait a week and things will change, inshallah. I know, super basic, but sometimes it might just make all the difference. Okay, time for the bonuses. Bonus 1. A lot of companies have started using something called discriminatory pricing, which is basically using your data against you to charge you different rates than other people based on how much they estimate you'd be willing to pay for that specific thing. Say a plane ticket, for example. To make sure an airline isn't doing this against you, try using a VPN or looking for the same ticket on someone else's computer or your phone. You may be surprised to see a difference in price. Bonus 2. If you have a lot of miles saved up, you might feel like you want to book your plane ticket with miles. But did you know most airlines have a rough miles to dollar value comparison? Some miles are worth more than other miles, and if you see a ticket that's cheap enough, it may save you more in the end using money to buy rather than miles. Off the top of my head, I think American Airlines miles are each worth about 1.7 cents. So if a ticket costs you 10,000 miles to book, it has a rough equivalency of $170 to book that ticket using your miles. If the ticket is less than $170, consider just buying the ticket with cash and then saving the miles for something later when they can be used for a better deal. It's like working with two different currencies. I'll link the miles to dollars conversion in the description below. Bonus number 3. It's a simple one, but activate app notifications and emails from airlines. A lot of times, airlines will run snap discounts where all the prices will fall and you can score better deals. You just have to know they exist. It's not always cheaper, but it's a battle out there to book tickets, and everything helps. Google Flights is one of the best search engines available, and I like to think that it gives me about 85% of all of the information out there to make sure I have the best informed decision when I book a flight. To make sure you don't miss out on the other remaining 15%, which I'll cover later, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future content. Also, if you're traveling somewhere with a lot of street food and maybe not the best food safety standards, check out this video here to see how I stay safe while eating street food abroad. Thanks so much for watching. See ya.